figured what out? The smooth sailing. It wasn't about the water being still. It was about having a crew that wouldn't let you drown, even if the boat was upside down. Elias smiled, that slow, steady smile that always made her feel safe. I'm not going anywhere, Reba. Good, because Van's planning a tactical anniversary gala next month, and I'm going to need you to hide the drone. Chapter 25. The Fullest Circle. 10 years later, the new Jablonskis were no longer new. Leo and Sam were the pillars of the neighborhood, and their son was now the one helping Monty build a tactical Mars rover in the garage. Reba sat in her rocking chair, the one Elias had made for her, watching the sunset. Her hair was a beautiful, defiant shade of silver, and her Oscar was still on the mantel, though it was currently wearing a tiny knitted scarf that Monty had made for it. The Houston heat was still there. The humidity was still there. But Reba Hart was no longer fighting it. She was part of it. Kira was a legend, Sarah was a judge, and Van was, well, Van was currently trying to patent a tactical atmosphere regulator for the porch, but he was happy. Reba took a sip of her tea and closed her eyes. She could hear the sounds of her family, the laughter, the arguing, the music, and the beautiful, chaotic noise of life being lived at full volume. She knew that the storm would come again. There would be more floods, more heartbreak, and more sack of stupid moments. But she wasn't afraid. She was a survivor. She was a partner. She was a heart. And for the first time in her life, Reba Hart realized that she didn't need the sun to stay out forever. Because when you live in the eye of the hurricane, you learn that the most beautiful part of the fire is the warmth it leaves behind. Chapter 26. The Legacy of Vesper Avenue. As the years blurred into a soft focus of memories, the house on Vesper Avenue became more than just a home, it became a lighthouse. Every weekend, the driveway was filled with cars belonging to various members of the extended Hart clan. Kira's daughter, a firebrand named Ruby, had inherited her mother's voice and her grandmother's sharp tongue. She was currently in the garage, teaching Monty how to play the drums, while Van tried to explain the tactical advantages of rhythmic synchronization. Van, she's 8, Reba called from the kitchen. The only tactical advantage she needs is being able to reach the snare drum. She's a prodigy, Reba. We need to optimize her practice environment. I'm thinking about installing sound-dampening foam made from recycled diaper linings. Reba just shook her head and went back to her brisket. But even in the glow of success and family, the world outside was moving faster than ever. A major tech firm, Aethercorp, had set its sights on the land surrounding Vesper Avenue for a new smart city development. They weren't just offering buyouts, they were threatening eminent domain. Sarah, now a highly respected judge, took a leave of absence to handle the case. It wasn't just about the Harts. It was about the neighborhood. It was about Leo and Sam, the elderly couple down the street, and the history of a street that had seen more storms than most cities. They think they can just build a glass tower over our memories. Mom, Sarah said, her eyes flashing with the same fire Reba had when she stood on that Oscar stage. They don't know who they're dealing with. Chapter 27. The Passing of the Torch. The legal battle lasted 2 years. It was a war of papers, hearings, and public protests. Van utilized the command center's resources to create a tactical community defense network, providing neighbors with legal aid and logistics. Kira performed a series of benefit concerts that kept the movement in the national headlines. In the end, it was a quiet moment in a courtroom that sealed the victory. Sarah presented a folder of drawings, not architectural blueprints, but the crayon drawings Sarah and her siblings had made over the decades. This isn't just land, Sarah told the court. This is the soil that grew a family. You can't put a price on the eye of a hurricane. The judge ruled in their favor. Vesper Avenue was declared a historic district. The celebration that night was the loudest the street had ever heard. Even the paparazzi, who had mostly become family friends over the years, were invited to the barbecue. As the music faded into the night, Reba found herself alone in the living room, looking at the Oscar. She felt a presence behind her. It was Brock. He was older now, his spiritual glow replaced by a genuine, quiet peace. He had moved back to Houston after his Florida venture had folded, living in a small apartment nearby. "You really did it, Reba," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved the world. I just saved my porch, Brock. The rest was just a side effect. I'm sorry I wasn't there for the hard parts." Reba turned to him, and, for the first time, she truly forgave him. "The hard parts were what made the good parts worth it, Brock. If you'd stayed, maybe we wouldn't have found the Oscar, or the beam, or Elias." She walked over and gave him a brief, firm hug. It wasn't a romantic gesture, it was the closing of a chapter. Chapter 28. A New Horizon. A few months later, the command center announced its most ambitious project yet, Project Horizon. It was a series of low-cost, high-durability housing units for single parents, built using the same modular technology Van had developed for his tactical tree houses. "It's not just a house, Reba. It's a fortress of solitude for moms who need a break," Van yelled during the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Reba stood next to Elias, her hand tucked into his. She was retired now, at least officially. The foundation was being run by a team of young, energetic leaders. And the company was in Van's capable, if erratic, hands. "What are you going to do now, Reba?" a reporter asked. "You've won an Oscar, built an empire, and saved your neighborhood. What's left?" Reba looked at Elias, then at the sunset. "I'm going to go home, sit on my porch, and drink my tea. And if I'm lucky, I might even get to hear a drum solo." Chapter 29. The Eternal Eye. The final chapter of the Heart story didn't end with a bang or a gala. It ended on a warm Tuesday evening on Vesper Avenue. Reba sat on her porch, the iced tea sweet and cold. Elias was in the yard, teaching Monty how to plane a piece of wood. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and the distant sound of Ruby practicing her scales. She thought back to that day in the kitchen, staring at the cereal box. She thought about the smooth sailing she had wanted so desperately. The storms were where the growth happened. The hurricanes were where the love was tested and proven. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a builder. She was a legend. But most importantly, she was a mother. "Hey, Reba," Elias called out, wiping sawdust from his brow. "You want to see what Monty made?" Reba walked down the steps, her knees a little stiff, but her heart as light as air. Monty held up a small, hand-carved piece of wood. It was a turtle, a tactical turtle. "It's for the mantle, Grandma," he said, his eyes shining. "To keep the Golden Man company." Reba pulled him into a hug, smelling the sawdust and the Texas heat. "It's perfect, Monty. Absolutely perfect." As the stars began to appear over Houston, Reba Hart stood in her yard, surrounded by the people she loved, in the house she had saved, in the life she had built. The hurricane was still out there, somewhere, waiting for its next turn. But Reba didn't mind. The End. The Eye of the Hurricane. A novel by Gemini. Chapter 1. The Humidity of Heartbreak. The Houston air didn't just sit, it pressed. It was a wet, heavy wool blanket that smelled of scorched asphalt and blooming jasmine. For Reba Hart, that humidity had always been the physical manifestation of her life. Suffocating, inescapable, but somehow, home. She stood in her kitchen on Vesper Avenue, staring at a half-empty box of cereal. Her reflection in the stainless steel toaster showed a woman who was holding it together by a single, fraying thread. Brock was gone. Not just at the office gone, but starting a second family with a woman who thought yoga was a personality trait gone. "Smooth sailing," Reba whispered to the empty room. "That's all I asked for, Lord. A little breeze, a steady rudder, and maybe a discount on wine." But the universe had other plans. The front door slammed, and the storm didn't just walk in. It tripped over its own feet. "Reba, you won't believe it." Van Montgomery, her son-in-law, and the human equivalent of a golden retriever with a concussion, skidded into the kitchen. "I've had a vision, an epiphany, $1 million idea." Reba didn't look up. "If it involves training squirrels to do the laundry again, Van, the answer is no. I'm still finding acorns in my delicates." No, Van panted, leaning against the island. Diapers. But for men. Tactical men. Men who want to change a diaper and feel like they're defusing a bomb in an action movie. Reba finally looked at him. She saw the sweat on his brow and the earnest, terrifying fire in his eyes. Behind him, her daughter Kira wandered in, headphones around her neck, looking like she wanted to set the house on fire just for the aesthetic. The hurricane was forming. Reba could feel the atmospheric pressure dropping. She took a sip of lukewarm coffee and braced herself. Chapter 2. The Tactical Pivot. The months that followed were a blur of chaos and Kevlar. While Brock and Barbara Jean were busy finding their chakras in a local community center, Reba and Van were in the garage, surrounded by prototypes. The idea was absurd. The command commode, a diaper bag that looked like a paratrooper's kit, featuring molly webbing, matte black hardware, and tactical diapers with camouflage prints. Van handled the vision, which mostly involved shouting, "Extreme," at random intervals, and Reba handled the reality. "Van, we can't put a bayonet lug on a diaper bag," Reba said, rubbing her temples. "But what if there's a rogue toddler?" Reba. High-stakes parenting requires high-stakes gear. Amidst the business chaos, the drama of Vesper Avenue boiled over. Brock was constantly dropping by to share his newfound wisdom, usually accompanied by Barbara Jean, who insisted on cleansing Reba's house with sage. "I feel a lot of stagnant energy in the foyer, Reba," Barbara Jean chirped, waving a smoking bundle of herbs. "It's blocking your abundance." "The only thing blocking my abundance is the two of you standing in my doorway," Reba snapped. "If you don't get that burning weed out of my house, I'm going to use it to light your yoga mats on fire."